The moment her boyfriend kicked off his sneakers like he owned the place, I knew I wasn't going to scream. I thought I would. I thought I'd explode, shatter a plate, maybe throw her favorite mug against the wall. But instead, I just stood by the kitchen counter and watched him walk in like he'd forgotten something, like this was his house. He didn't even look at me. That was the part that hit hardest. She came in behind him, laughing. She was still laughing. And when she saw me standing there, holding the mail and a half-eaten granola bar, her face didn't drop. She didn't panic. She just said, "Oh, you're early." I swear, the room tilted. That's what you say when your coworker walks into a meeting too soon. You're early. Not when your husband catches you hauling your side piece into the living room with an overnight bag and plans to redecorate. I didn't respond. I didn't blink. I looked at him. He had the kind of jawline that only shows up in sponsored posts and gym mirrors. And he winked. He actually winked at me. She walked past me like I was air. "Curtis, listen, there's no reason to make this weird. We were going to talk to you together, okay?" She said that like they were about to pitch me a timeshare. He dropped his bag by the couch and said, "We just want a mature transition. This can be civilized." Civilized. The word echoed in my brain like a joke told at my funeral. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just reached into the junk drawer, pulled out the keys, set them gently on the table, and said the last thing they expected to hear. "You're standing in someone else's house." Her brow twitched. "What?" "I sold it. 3 days ago. You missed the paperwork because you blocked my email." I turned the folder toward her. Bold letters. Legal seals. My signature. Her absence. "You said you wanted space," I said, my voice trembling, "so I gave it to you. 800 miles of it." For once, her perfect, smug composure cracked. And him? He finally looked at me like I wasn't invisible. He actually spoke for her. "Wait, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the movers coming at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I'm talking about your toothbrush not having a home. I'm talking about how I smiled for the last time yesterday when the buyer wired the full amount into my account. And then, because I'm pathetic and broken and still full of some twisted kind of politeness, I handed her the last piece of the puzzle. A goodbye letter I wrote when I still thought maybe she'd change her mind. She didn't read it. She just stared at it like it was a bomb. And in a way, it was. I grabbed my coat, my one duffel bag, and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard her whisper, "Curtis, you don't have to do this." But I already had. I'd done it the second she decided to treat me like a doormat with a mortgage. I walked out without slamming the door. I didn't even flinch. I just left the keys on the table. And I hope they haunt her every single night. I thought I was done the second I shut that door, but of course, it's never that easy. You don't walk away from 9 years of emotional erosion and expect the dust not to cling to your skin. I sat in the car for almost 20 minutes before I even turned the engine. The driveway still had her oil stain on it. Her favorite wind chime was dancing in the breeze. From the outside, it looked like a home. From the inside, it had turned into a crime scene with no blood, just betrayal smeared across every surface. I told myself I was heading to the motel. I even pulled up the address. But instead of driving, I just stared at the folder beside me. The one with the sale paperwork, the signed agreement, the check copies, everything I needed to prove I wasn't as stupid as she thought I was. And yet, somehow, I still felt like the loser. That's what they don't tell you about getting the upper hand. It doesn't feel good when your whole arm's been crushed first. Halfway down the block, I saw the garage door open. Her boyfriend, Troy, because of course his name is Troy, stepped out like he belonged to the neighborhood already. He looked around like he was scoping out his new kingdom. And then he did something that nearly made me turn around and ruin everything. He opened my toolbox. Not hers. Not something we shared. Mine. The red Craftsman I got from my father, who passed it down to me with grease still under the handles. Troy opened it, pulled out a wrench, and held it like he didn't know the difference between a bolt and a socket. It was the kind of violation that made my fists curl against the steering wheel. I had no claim anymore, not legally, but emotionally. That box still had my name written all over it. I drove off, finally, but my stomach was twisting. I kept telling myself this was closure, that I'd burned the bridge behind me and could never walk back. Except, as it turns out, I had forgotten something. 2 things, actually. Number 1, the black box in the attic. The one with all the letters I wrote Jolene back when I still believed we had something rare. I didn't want to read them ever again, but I couldn't let her read them either. That box held too much of the version of me I didn't want anyone to pity. And number 2, my dog tags. Not from war or anything heroic. I never served. But Jolene got them made for me as a gag the first year we moved in, little metal plates that said property of Jolene, with a date engraved under it. I kept them in my nightstand, thinking it was cute. No? They were just evidence of how thoroughly I let myself become owned. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I made a sharp U-turn before I hit the gas station. I told myself I'd just sneak in through the back while they were distracted. Grab the box. Grab the tags. Leave without a sound. What I didn't expect was for the house to already feel different. I crept in through the laundry room, still had my own key, and the second I stepped inside, it was like I didn't recognize the air. Music was playing. Loud, obnoxious music. Not even something tasteful. Troy's voice echoed from the living room, talking about knocking out a wall to open the space up. Jolene was laughing. That cruel kind of laugh that's only ever aimed at the person who left. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt the sting in my chest all the same. They were talking about me. About how quickly I left. About how predictable I was. About how they didn't think I'd have the guts to actually sell the place. I gritted my teeth and slipped upstairs. The attic door was still stiff. You had to wiggle the latch, which Troy clearly hadn't learned yet. I crawled up and grabbed the box, heart pounding like I was robbing my own memories. But then I made a mistake. A small one. Stupid, really. I knocked over an old metal lamp on my way down the attic ladder. It crashed against the wall like a gunshot. Voices stopped. Footsteps started. I had 10 seconds, maybe less, before they'd come upstairs. And I hadn't grabbed the dog tags yet. So I did what I always do when panic hits. I froze. Then the door opened. Jolene stood in the doorway, and for one flickering second, her face broke. Not into anger. Not into smugness. Into something like recognition. Like she saw me for the first time in months. You shouldn't be here, she said, not yelling. Just, low. I forgot something, I said, holding up the dusty black box like a hostage. Troy appeared behind her, shirtless now, holding a beer like he was in a frat house. Dude, you got your stuff. Time to go. I looked at Jolene one last time. I was never trying to win you back, I muttered. I just didn't want to leave my dignity behind with the rest of your furniture. I brushed past them without another word. But as I reached the front door, Jolene said one thing soft, but loud enough for only me to hear. You'll regret this. Funny thing is, I think she already does. I didn't go back to the motel that night. Something about that place, the buzzing light outside my door, the sticky floor near the vending machine, the cough from the guy in the next room that sounded like it came with a warning label, it made me feel like I'd already lost. Like I'd stepped into the cliché of every man whose life had been cracked open and poured out on the sidewalk. Instead, I drove to the 24-hour laundromat across town and just sat in the car, headlights off, watching the spinning dryers through the window. It was strange, but the mindless rhythm of those clothes tumbling in circles calmed me. There's something about the way strangers fold their laundry in silence that makes everything else seem far away. I opened the black box in the passenger seat. I hadn't looked inside since. I don't know, probably years. There were folded napkins with quick notes I wrote Jolene in the early days. Don't forget your scarf, or I love your coffee breath. There were ticket stubs from movies I forgot we saw. A cheap Valentine's card with a cringy pun about pizza. And under it all, a photo I didn't remember printing. Us on the porch, her in my hoodie, both of us smiling like we didn't know how fast smiles can vanish. I should have thrown it all away right then. But I didn't. I couldn't. At some point that night, I must have fallen asleep in the front seat, because I woke up with a stiff neck and the box pressed against my ribs. Morning traffic was already beginning, and I panicked for a moment, not because I was late for anything, but because I realized I hadn't checked my phone. I had 12 missed calls. 7 were from an unknown number. 5 were from Jolene. That was the first warning sign. Then came the texts. The first was civil. Call me, please. The second one less so. Where is it? I know you were in the house. I didn't reply. I just sat there, feeling the weight of something I couldn't quite name pushing down on me. By noon, I finally checked my voicemail. One message stood out. It wasn't her voice, it was his. Troy. He sounded calm at first. Measured. Like he'd been coached. Hey, Curtis. Look, man, we just want to clear the air. There's been a misunderstanding. You left some stuff behind, and it's complicated. Give us a call. Then, after a pause, his tone shifted. It's not funny, dude. You think this is a game? You think you can mess with our lives? Call me back. That was when I realized they found the dog tags. But not just the dog tags. They must have opened the nightstand drawer and found the envelope I had meant to destroy months ago but never did, the one marked for my lawyer. Inside it was a printed thread of messages. Not from Jolene. From Troy. Messages he'd stupidly sent from a work email. Flirty at first. Graphic later. But one in particular sealed it all. She says she'll get half when the divorce goes through. House, account, everything. Don't worry, he's soft. He'll fold. He sent that weeks ago. She knew about it. She never deleted it. She never warned him to be careful. She just let it sit there like a blueprint. And I had saved it, printed it, sealed it, forgot about it. Until now. I didn't mean for them to find it. I wasn't trying to start a war. But apparently, leaving truth behind is more dangerous than leaving a mess. The phone kept buzzing. A voicemail came in. I didn't want to listen, but something about the way her name appeared on the screen this time, not Jolene, but unknown caller, made my stomach drop. I hit play. Her voice was different. Not angry. Not even hurt. Just quiet. Strained. You think this makes you the good guy? You think this makes you free? I don't care about the house. But what you did, keeping that file, you don't know who he really is. I can't protect you now. The message cut out. I just sat there, the heater humming, heart hammering like I'd swallowed a siren. I looked around like someone might be watching me, but the lot was empty. That's the moment I realized something terrifying. I might have escaped the house. But I hadn't escaped them. They weren't finished. And now, I wasn't sure I was, either. I didn't reply. Not to her, not to him. I sat in the laundromat parking lot for hours like I was anchored there, trying to figure out if I had just pulled off a silent victory or lit a fuse I couldn't put out. I replayed that voicemail in my head on a loop. I can't protect you now. It sounded dramatic, maybe even desperate. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt that itch behind my spine, the kind that doesn't go away when you shift in your seat, the kind that only shows up when your body knows something before your brain does. I finally left when the guy running the dry cleaning side came out and started sweeping near my car with more aggression than necessary. I checked into a different motel. Not the first one. A cheaper one. Dirtier. I told myself it was temporary, but if I'm honest, it felt like exactly what I deserved. I was the kind of man who slept next to betrayal for years and called it rough patch. The kind of man who planned an escape too late and then tried to make it poetic. By the time I got to the room, I was exhausted. I dropped the black box on the nightstand like it was radioactive and collapsed on the bed. I must have passed out for a few hours. When I woke up, my phone had no new calls. That almost scared me more than all the buzzing before. But then I opened my email. The first one was from an address I didn't recognize. No subject. Just a message that read, "Didn't know you kept records. Smart guy. You might want to watch your back now." No signature. No threats. Just that one sentence, sitting there like a loaded trap. The second email was from Jolene. The subject line said, "Don't delete this." I clicked it with the same hesitation you'd use opening a letter from the IRS. Her message wasn't long. It wasn't angry. It was strange. She said she didn't know I kept anything. That she assumed I was too soft to think ahead. That she never thought I'd ever really leave, let alone take the house out from under her. But then she wrote something that made my hands go cold. "Troy's not who you think he is." I didn't know how bad it was until too late. I thought he was just reckless. I didn't know he kept files. On people. On clients. On me. She said he worked in cybersecurity. That most of his work friends were people she'd never actually met. That when she caught him snooping on her laptop last year, he said it was just a test. And that when she laughed at him, he stopped talking to her for 2 days straight. I closed the email. I opened it again. Reread it twice. There was no apology in her words. No affection. Just fear. Cold, sharp, coiled fear dressed up as a confession. I didn't know if I believed her. But I also didn't know if I could afford not to. I left the motel again, this time with a different kind of anxiety curling in my gut. Not heartbreak. Not regret. Something deeper. Something instinctual. I drove toward the public library. I figured if anyone was tracking my phone, they wouldn't expect me to research from a computer built in 2009. I searched his name. Nothing unusual at first. Socials, company pages, some gym photos. But then I hit a site buried 3 pages down. A forum post flagged and hidden behind 2 login walls. A thread about a data leak tied to off-contract surveillance. The name T. Madsen came up in one of the screenshots. The timestamp matched the same year Jolene said he started getting weird. And then the final kicker, someone in the comments replied, "If this guy is involved, don't confront him. Just vanish. No show. No drama. Just disappear." I sat back in the chair, suddenly aware of how loud my own breathing was. Everything around me felt too sharp. The clicking of other people typing, the flicker of the fluorescent light, the distant cough that sounded too familiar. I packed up fast and left without printing anything. I didn't want to leave a trace of what I'd seen. I didn't want to know what else he might have seen or saved from my old laptop, from Jolene's, from our Wi-Fi, from me. Back in my car, I locked the doors. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or panic. I checked the back seat, then checked it again, then turned off my phone completely. I thought divorcing Jolene would be the worst thing I ever had to survive. I thought selling the house and walking out would be the thing that broke me. But now I'm starting to realize something terrifying. I wasn't the only one being watched in that house. And if Troy knew what I found, then it's not just a messy breakup anymore. It's a loose end. And I might be it. By the next morning, I couldn't tell if I was being followed or if I'd just spent too much time alone with my thoughts. I had this permanent buzz in the back of my skull, like the static you get when a television is stuck between channels. Only it was emotional. My life wasn't just off track anymore. It felt like I'd slipped into a version of reality where I'd never really been in control to begin with. I stopped by a gas station off the highway to grab coffee and stare blankly at my reflection in the smudged bathroom mirror. My eyes looked sunken, my shirt was wrinkled beyond fixing, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic. That Troy wasn't some shadowy villain, just a bitter affair partner with a tech job and a fragile ego. But the facts didn't line up with that theory anymore. And the more I tried to shove the fear down, the more it started oozing through the cracks in my reasoning. Then something strange happened. As I walked out to the pump, an older man with a lopsided hat and a face like sandpaper nodded at me. I thought nothing of it, until he muttered my name. Not just my name, my full name. Curtis Raymond Harvell, he said, like he was reading it off a sheet. "You don't know me, but you need to hear something." I froze, dead cold. My fingers went numb around the gas nozzle. "I ain't with him," the man added quickly, glancing over his shoulder. "But I know his kind. You kicked the wrong anthill, son." I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed his arm and dragged him behind the station wall like we were suddenly in a spy movie. "Who are you?" I demanded, or tried to. My voice cracked halfway through. The man didn't flinch. "You ain't the first person he's done this to. Maybe not even the 10th. He's got a pattern, a trail. Every time he finds a woman with access to money or property, he plays the same game. Gets close, encourages her to cut ties, makes sure her ex is too broken or embarrassed to talk. Then poof, 2 years later, she's cleaned out and isolated, and he's already moving on to the next one." My mouth went dry. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? The man gave a humorless chuckle. "Because the women don't realize they were used until it's too late. And the men? They don't talk. They disappear. Or they think they're walking away clean. And then a couple months later, they get hit with something they didn't see coming. Identity theft. IRS trouble. Anonymous tips to their employers. Anything to keep them quiet." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a business card. No name. No number. Just a P.O. box and the words, "Document everything. Tell no one." "I'm telling you," I said, my voice hoarse. "He's already on to me. He found the papers. Jolene warned me. He left me a voicemail." The man stopped me. "Don't call that number again. Don't respond. Don't delete anything. And whatever you do, don't go back to her." I watched him walk away like he'd just unloaded a burden he'd carried for years. He didn't look back. He just disappeared into a rusty Ford and drove off without pumping gas. I stood there, wind whipping through my sleeves, unsure if I just met a lunatic or the last sane person in this nightmare. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the motel with every light on, the TV playing static just to fill the silence. I took the old hard drive from my duffel bag, the one I hadn't touched since the week before I moved out, and started digging through it. I needed something. Proof. A trail. A mistake. Anything. And I found it. Buried deep in an old backup folder was a screen recording, not mine. Hers. Jolene had accidentally recorded her screen once while video chatting with Troy. I remember she said her laptop had glitched and made a weird video she couldn't delete. She asked me to help, but I never got around to it. I just backed up her stuff to an external before wiping the machine. I clicked play. What I saw made me physically recoil. Troy was talking to someone else. Not Jolene. Not me. Some third person. On a dark screen. No name. Just a silhouette. But the audio was clear. They were talking about bank access. About real estate titles. About passwords. About me. About what I knew. The screen recording ended abruptly, but the last thing Troy said before it cut off echoed louder than anything I'd heard all week. If he talks, we bury him in paperwork first. If that fails, we make sure no one listens. I stared at the screen, heart pounding in my throat. Jolene had never seen this file. She probably never even knew it was created. But now that I had it, now that I'd seen the truth in their own words, I realized something far worse than betrayal. I wasn't part of their plan. I was an obstacle, and I was never supposed to leave the house with evidence. By the time the sun came up, I was sweating under the motel blanket like I had the flu, even though the room was cold. I hadn't slept, not really. My mind kept replaying that video clip, those words, that voice that didn't belong to Troy or Jolene, but someone else entirely. That last line echoed in my chest like a loaded gun on a glass table. If he talks, we bury him in paperwork first. If that fails, we make sure no one listens. I wasn't supposed to have that file. I wasn't supposed to see it. But now that I had, I realized something even worse than being betrayed by my wife. I was never the important one. Everything I thought was personal, the affair, the lies, the smug looks, the timing of the breakup, it had been strategy. I wasn't the real Mark. I was just a distraction. Someone weak enough to manipulate but strong enough to hold the house, the account, the equity. Troy didn't just use Jolene to hurt me. He used me to get closer to her. And once she was isolated, once the deed was in motion, once the trust was fractured, that's when the real play began. She didn't know. I believe that now. As much as I want to hate her, and believe me, some nights I do, she wasn't in on the long con. She thought she was having an affair. She thought she was trading up. But he wasn't after her love. He was after her access. That email trail I printed? The messages I left behind? That wasn't me being smart. That was dumb luck. But now that I knew what I had, I needed to decide whether to stay quiet or burn it all down. There was a name in the metadata of the screen recording. Nothing obvious. Just the word Silas embedded in a saved path. I didn't recognize it. Didn't know if it was a first name or an alias or some random folder. But it gave me a direction. A crack in the wall. I pulled together what I had, printouts, timestamps, a copy of the screen recording on a clean USB, and packed everything into a small lockbox I bought from a hardware store down the road. I didn't feel safe keeping it in the motel room, so I drove out to a public storage unit and rented the smallest space I could find. It was a 10x5 metal closet that smelled like paint thinner and regret. I left the lockbox there. Taped a note to the inside of the door that said, "If anything happens to me, open this and send it to the press." I didn't sign my name. I didn't leave a number. I just used a burner phone to take photos of everything, then powered it down and hid it under the spare tire in my truck. And still, I didn't feel safe. I got a coffee from a drive-thru, just for the routine, just to pretend I still had a normal morning like everyone else. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, a gray SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. Not unusual, but then it made every turn I made. Slowed when I slowed. Pulled over when I pulled over. I tried to lose it by cutting through a grocery store parking lot and exiting on the other side. It vanished. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until 20 minutes later, it reappeared near the highway on-ramp. That's when I knew I'd waited too long. I pulled into a mechanic shop on impulse and asked if I could speak to someone about installing a new GPS unit. The guy looked at me like I was asking for a time machine. But I didn't care. I just wanted an excuse to get off the road and out of sight. While he fiddled under the hood, I sat in the waiting room pretending to scroll through my phone, but really just counting the minutes since I last saw that SUV. And then, in the glass reflection of the vending machine, I saw a shape move behind the shop's entrance door. It wasn't someone coming in. It was someone watching through the glass, standing completely still, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses indoors, holding a phone, not filming, not talking, just standing there. I stood up too fast and nearly knocked over the chair. The man walked off the moment he saw me move. I ran out the door and scanned the lot. Nothing. No sign of him. No SUV. Just my car and the mechanic pretending not to notice that I looked like I was about to have a nervous breakdown. I don't know what scared me more, the possibility that he was following me, or the possibility that he wasn't, that he was just a warning. We're watching. Don't get brave. That night, I drove 2 hours north, stayed at a roadside inn with no cameras and cash-only rooms. It smelled like mildew and stale fries, but I didn't care. I pushed a chair under the doorknob, slept in my shoes, kept my laptop in my lap. In the middle of the night, I opened Jolene's old email. I hadn't touched it in weeks. She probably changed the password by now, but somehow it still worked. In the trash folder, I found something. A string of deleted drafts, never sent, all started around the same time she moved in with Troy. The first one said, "I think I made a mistake. I don't think this is about love anymore." The second said, "If I disappear, check the IP logs." The third was blank. Just a subject line. "Silas is watching me too." That's when I finally understood what the stranger at the gas station meant. This was never just about a house, or an affair, or even a man stealing from couples. This was about control. And now I was the one out of theirs. At least for now. I used to think the worst thing a person could do was lie to your face. But I've learned that's not true. The worst thing, the thing that cracks you in places you didn't know could break, is when someone lies by pretending not to know something you never told them. That's what Jolene did. Not just once. Not even just during the affair. It was threaded through our entire marriage, like a hairline fracture hidden beneath paint. I stayed at the inn another night. I had no plan. Just survival. But I couldn't sit in that sagging mattress another hour without knowing what Jolene meant in that draft. Silas is watching me too. I figured if I followed the thread long enough, I'd either unravel it or hang myself with it. At that point, I didn't care which. I just needed to know. I started with her college transcripts. She once told me she dropped out after her second year to figure things out. Said she was burned out. But when I accessed the university's forgotten alumni portal, thanks to a password she reused often, I saw something different. She didn't drop out. She was expelled. The reason? Academic dishonesty and an ongoing internal investigation linked to unauthorized access of restricted systems. I froze. It wasn't just a tech issue. There was a footnote about someone else being expelled too. A guy named Silas J. Marin. The same first name from that screen recording folder path. The same name from her unsent email. And then I remembered something. At the bottom of one of her drawers back in the house, she used to keep a small wooden box. I'd seen it maybe twice in our entire marriage. She never opened it. Never talked about it. I figured it was just sentimental junk. I had no way to get to that box now. But she had once scanned some old documents using my printer, and those ended up saved in a random folder I'd copied before I left. I opened the folder. Started digging. And there it was. A scan letter. Dated almost 9 years ago. From a university ethics board. Addressed to Ms. Jolene Marin. Marin, not Harvell. I don't know how I missed it. I don't know how I didn't notice that she'd kept her old name in certain files, or how I never questioned why she never showed me anything from that part of her life. The letter said she and Silas were suspected of running a small access ring, selling login credentials for administrative systems to off-campus third parties. Nothing proven, but enough that both were quietly dismissed and asked not to return. Suddenly, everything about Troy, the timing, the sophistication, the manipulation, made a sick kind of sense. She'd done this before, or at least been close to someone who had. And now? She'd fallen for the same type of man all over again. Or worse, maybe she never stopped being that kind of woman. I called the P.O. box number from the card that old man gave me back at the gas station. I didn't expect anyone to answer. I just needed to say something out loud. Get it out of my head. To my surprise, someone picked up on the third ring. Male voice. Calm. Quiet. "Is this about Matson or Marin?" he asked immediately. That stopped me cold. "Marin," I said slowly. She was my wife." "You need to listen carefully," the voice said. "She's not in control anymore. Hasn't been for months. Maybe longer. That man she's with, that's not his real name. Troy's a shell. His real identity is tied to a series of data scrapes from legal firms across 3 states. He uses women like Jolene to launder access. Not money access. Contracts. Permissions. Leverage." I didn't understand half of what he was saying, but the part one did? It dropped into my stomach like concrete. "So why me?" I whispered. "Why was I even part of this?" "You weren't," he said. "You were the stability. The signature. The husband who wouldn't look too close. You gave her structure, the paper trail that made it all look legitimate. She never meant to hurt you, Curtis. She just didn't plan to save you either." I didn't know whether to scream or cry or thank him. Before I could say anything, he added one last thing. Get rid of everything. Soon. Because if they know you've connected Silas to Jolene, you don't have much time left. Especially if she's still with him. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for what felt like hours. My fingers numb. My vision blurry. I wasn't just a husband who got cheated on. I was a prop in a con I never knew existed. And now? I wasn't sure whether I was still in the story or already being erased from it. It's strange how healing doesn't start with some inspirational moment or dramatic decision. It starts in silence, in the absence of noise. I felt it for the first time that morning, standing on a small hill at a rest stop 2 towns over, watching fog slide across the trees like a curtain being drawn back slowly. No screaming. No phone buzzing. No lawyers. No fear. Just air. Just sky. Just me, alone, but no longer cornered. After I got off that final call, I knew I couldn't run anymore. Running only works when someone's chasing you, and something told me Troy wouldn't risk it now. He didn't need to. He got what he wanted. Or so he thought. But what he didn't know was that I had already taken steps. That storage unit wasn't the only copy I made. I'd left a second package, same documents, same USB, with someone I never talked about, my sister, Robin. She's a paralegal in North Carolina. Level-headed, boring, brilliant. I hadn't told her the full story, just that I was going through a complicated separation and needed her to hold onto a folder for me just in case. And she did. She still had it. She overnighted it to a lawyer I'd reached out to under a fake name 2 weeks earlier. He took one look at the files and said, "This is bigger than divorce. This is federal." The best part? I didn't need to do anything else. No press conferences. No dramatic reveal. No retaliation. I just stepped back. Let the paper trail walk itself into the light. And it did. 3 weeks later, I got a call. Not from Jolene. Not from Troy. From an agent. Quiet tone. Professional. Just confirming my identity, then thanking me for the information. I asked if they needed me to testify. He said, "Not likely. You're technically a victim of identity exploitation, not a suspect. Stay low. Stay quiet. Stay out of their way." That was all. I never heard from Jolene again. I don't know if she got caught in the wave that followed. I don't know if she ran. I'd like to believe she figured it out just in time and cut ties. But the truth? I don't need to know. I'm done chasing the version of her that I invented just to feel worthy. That woman never really existed. It took time. More than I wanted to admit. Nights where I still flinched at every sound outside the motel door. Days where I couldn't walk into a bank without my stomach dropping. I had to rebuild everything, my credit, my routines, even the way I looked in the mirror. But little by little, it got quieter. I moved into a small studio apartment 2 states away. Nothing fancy. But it's mine. I got a job fixing HVAC systems at a school district. Steady work, good people, no weird passwords or hidden agendas. I adopted a dog from a shelter. Named her Pixel. She's loud, needy, kind of weird. Perfect. And just last month, something happened that made me stop and breathe for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. I got approved for a mortgage. It's not a mansion. It's not even a house, technically. It's a condo with thin walls and a creaky floor and neighbors who argue too loud. But it's honest. It's paid for. And when I unlock that door at night, no one's waiting to move in behind me. I never got revenge. I never went viral. I never even told most of my friends what really happened. But I'll tell you this. There's a particular kind of peace that comes when you've lost everything, survived it, and realized you didn't need half of it in the first place. She brought her boyfriend to my door, thinking I'd cave. I sold the house. And now, every time I think about that moment, I smile. Not because I won, but because I walked away for real this time. And for once in my life, I didn't look back.